All right, chat. Let's get this going. Let's get this show on the road. This is what I've seen people are proposing, which is the, quote, Democratic Tea Party. The Democratic Tea Party. Now, here's my problem with the Democratic Tea Party. The problem with the Democratic Tea Party is the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are nothing alike, and the progressive left is nothing like the Tea Party right. And so I think that if this is your mental model of politics, you're making so many serious errors that you're going to fail. And let's talk about what those errors are really quick. The first is the Tea Party was an astroturfed movement by more right-wing billionaires. And it comes from, it started with a CNBC, analyst speaking on the floor of the Wall Street Stock Exchange. Like, or was it the like Chicago futures, it was one of those. It was literally from a stock trading or futures trading floor. It couldn't be more Wall Street or, finance bro, billionaire friendly, right? So there was a ton of money propping up the Tea Party people from the very, very beginning. And so it was aligned more with the donors than the Republican politicians they were primarying. That's the thing that people don't understand, is that the Republican politicians that were in office that the Tea Party were attacking for being too moderate, they were more in line with the voters and less in line with the Republican donors. And what the Republican Tea Party did, it was a disciplining of the Republican Party to be in line with the bourgeois billionaire class. And that's where the money. So if you were coming up and say you're going to be more right wing, you had this huge panoply of donor support. You had Fox News was supporting you. Talk radio was supporting you. Basically, everything that a conservative Republican watched was in favor of and supporting the Tea Party, right? And billionaires were astroturfing the fuck out of it. That's not the true of going to the left. All right, the left is not going to have the support of mainstream media that the average Democrats watch. It is not going to be more in line with the big donors. The BYD PE is 35ish. Thank you, medium rare. That's exactly my point. It's it's like 4 times less than Tesla's. And so you're going to be going up against the institutions of the Democratic Party. Like a lot of the Republican Party, that's what people don't understand, is it's like when the Tea Party was bubbling up, a lot of Republicans who disagreed with them, they were in places like Delaware, right? They were in places where being a moderate Republican was probably the smart strategy if you wanted to try to win. And ultimately, it served as a way of disciplining existing Republicans to be even more right-wing. I don't see that happening with the Democratic Party. I just don't think that's coherent. I don't think it's a good analogy. It's the opposite. We're trying to build a grassroots thing that's authentically from the people and will be against the interests of the donor class. The analogy that we need is Morena in Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum may have an 80% approval rating, but the people who don't approve of her? The 20% that are richest in the country. The rich fuckers of Mexico. That's who hate her. So, like, the Dems try to do this thing where they're like, no, we're going to do a Tea Party. It's just not, it's not it. It's not it. But I guess we'll have to see.
So the moment has finally arrived. We have been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time, as those of you who've been with me on this ride from the beginning know. Look at this in Axios. Quote, "They hate us. Democrats confront their own Tea Party."
Yeah, we didn't read this article. I wanted to read this, but we forgot. But now I'm having Kyle do it for me.
That's right, y'all. The left-wing Tea Party is finally here. We've been waiting, and it has arrived. And at this point, honestly, it's undeniable, and even Democratic politicians are starting to notice. Look at this. Democratic members of Congress back home in their districts for the last week have been encountering a level of anger and hostility that some see as reminiscent of the 2010 Tea Party wave. The dynamic could spill over into the 2026 primaries, lawmakers tell Axios, with the infuriated grassroots attempting to throw out House and Senate Democrats as they see as unprepared to take on Trump. Quote, any Democratic incumbent who thinks they can rest on their laurels and not show their constituents that they are fighting like hell is making a mistake, said Representative Jared Huffman, a Democrat of California. A senior House Democrat speaking on the condition of anonymity to offer an even blunter assessment told Axios, quote,
the media is going to paint any grassroots leftist movement as a Tea Party because they have 15 years of messaging against the Tea Party to manufacture consent against the left. Yeah, that's also that's a good point as well. That being said, I don't think that's very effective as a strategy. But yes, yes, exactly. They want to be like, we've told you the Tea Party, like the thing about the Democratic Party, that's the reason why, like a lot of people will ask me stuff like this. And this is probably the opinion that the mainstream Democrat centrist think is the strongest against Bernie, right? They say that the argument they think is the strongest against Bernie is this. You think Bernie would have won? Well, he lost the primary. How could he win the general if he couldn't even win a primary, right? Like that's the argument that I think centrists in general, Democrats in general, think is the strongest argument against Bernie Sanders. And the answer to that is very simple. The type of person who votes in Democratic primaries is not a representative of the Democratic Party as a whole or of the majority of the general electorate, meaning that they are different in kind. They're not representative. And so what do you mean by they're not representative? Well, the answer is they're much more college educated. They make a lot more money and they're older. And so what I'm saying is the primary is not like a random's 20% of the electorate that vote or 30 or 40% of the electorate that vote. It's the type of people who identify themselves closest with the Democratic Party and who are more upscale and educated. Those are the people that vote. But when you talk about the general election, that's almost the entire adult population. On a presidential year, we're getting 75, 80%, between 70 and 80% of the adult population, the eligible voters are voting. So that's like almost everyone votes in the presidential, right? And so the types of people that vote in the general election for the president were disproportionately less likely to vote in the primary. So the type of person that is voting in Democratic primaries is a person that doesn't have the same problems and doesn't listen to the same arguments. It doesn't see the same shit that a regular human being does in the general election. And that's what makes the left, that's the problem the left faces right now, is that the people that, like Bernie Sanders is very popular among independents and people who call themselves moderate. Let me see if I could find a poll. Oh man, I really wish I had a poll for this right now. I didn't pull one up, but hold on. I think I saw something the other day that said he had net plus 10 approval rating. If anybody can find it for me, I don't know. I feel like if we don't split and try to do the takeover, the Democrats will just F it up and it'll flop. Here. The reason why I'm saying that trying to take over the Democratic Party is stupid is because of this analysis that I'm providing you, which is the people that vote in Democratic primaries just consider themselves Democrat. They are wearing blue. They're the vote blue to people. The vote blue, no matter who people, are the people who vote in Democratic primaries. The people who would get offended if you criticize Obama or Biden, they're the people who vote in Democratic primaries, right? They're not the people that, but in the general election, they are a minority. They can't win. So the problem is when you allow yourself to be trapped in the Democratic Party, what happens is the type of people that are going to select the candidates are going to be the people that are the most identify as a Democrat. And they are the people that trust the Democratic elites. They're the people that say, well, what should we do? What is Joe Biden saying about trans people? Joe Biden's saying that trans people are going too far. Okay, well, then I don't support trans people going in sports. Like, I think a lot of people have been talking about the trans issue a lot lately, and they've been like, oh, man, the radicals think that trans women should be able to play women's sports. And if you go and look at the polling on that issue in particular, it didn't start to get really bad for trans people. It's till the Democrats started to say, I don't support women in sports. That's when it went from like the Republicans were at 45%, approval for banning trans people from sports to 75. The movement didn't happen on the Republicans. The movement happened on Democrats. Democrats listened to MSNBC. They listened to Joe Biden. They listened to Democratic officials saying, ooh, this is hurting us. And then they changed their position. They came out and said, oh, no, that's right. I think trans people are hurting us. And this is the reality. Any issue is not going to remain 70-30, except for very few ones that people already understand by having them directly affect them. Like, for example, Social Security, right? 80% of people are going to approve of Social Security forever because they get Social Security and they know it's good. All right. But when it's something like any other issue is rapidly going to polarize, and it's just a matter of the Republicans having to send their polarization machine against it. If the Democrats don't counter message, then their Republicans win. And this is the issue. This is the issue. We just don't have the population of people that hate or distrust the mainstream media and are on the left. They're not the type of people that voted primaries, but they are a majority coalition in the general. And like in 2020, and this is very important, in 2020, Bernie Sanders was not unpopular. I'll say that again. If Bernie Sanders had won the nomination, the Democrats would have been happy with Bernie Sanders. All right. It wasn't that they hated Bernie Sanders. They didn't successfully make Bernie Sanders a bad choice. What they made him is not the most strategic choice. And this is what vote bluers, never whoers don't understand, like Sam Cedar, is that they're not going to attack AOC on her arguments. They're not going to attack AOC on her policies. They're not going to attack AOC on her identity. They're going to attack AOC on this nebulous bullshit idea that she's not the most strategic vote. Because Democratic voters have been programmed to vote strategically. So what they do is they listen to mainstream media, the primary voters do anyway, and they say, the primary voters are like, I will make the vote. I agree with Bernie Sanders on every issue. However, my TV is telling me that you may like Bernie, but he's, more likely to lose to Trump. So defeating Trump is my number one priority. I vote for the smart choice, Joe Biden. That's it. The Democrats don't even have to bother making arguments about X, Y, and Z. It's about, you want to defeat Trumpism. You want to defeat Trump. And sure, you may like Bernie and all the things he stands for, but you have to make the strategic decision. And here's the reality. That is not actually the strategic decision. That's actually the losing move. But the elites who are ideologically opposed to Bernie, they use whatever argument is at hand to defeat Bernie. They don't really believe it. They don't think it's actually true. They go like, yeah, we know that Bernie Sanders is more electable than Hillary Clinton, but we want to stop Bernie Sanders' policies, so we have to lie to our viewers that and our followers that he's not electable. And that is the problem with voting in the primary, because the type of people who don't agree with that or would ignore that or would vote for Bernie in the general, they don't have the power. And you're basically pushing people into a system that's designed to defeat you. The number one purpose of the Democratic Party is to contain and diffuse progressive energy. That's it. You're like, yeah, we're going to go in there and we're going to, step into the wood chipper. It's like a cow going into the fucking chute at the slaughterhouse. It's designed to keep you complacent up until the point they put a fucking captive bolt gun to your head and kill your ass. Let's take a look at this poll of Bernie Sanders approval, right? Bernie Sanders approval with moderates is 51%. Self-identified moderates, 51% to 36% disapprove. And he's got 14% approval with conservatives. This is a poll that has Bernie Sanders. So even moderates, so-called moderates, like Bernie Sanders. Let's compare Bernie Sanders to, say, somebody else. Elizabeth Warren. Okay, she's like not well known. I have to find her with somebody who's well known. Elon Musk. Moderate. 36% approve, 57% disapprove. They've got some weird people that they're polling. All right, Donald Trump, moderates, ideology, moderates, 42% favorable, 53% unfavorable. So Bernie Sanders is the most JD Vance, moderate, 34% favorable, 52% unfavorable. So Bernie Sanders has the best approval rating with moderates? Absolutely destroys Donald Trump by 20-some points? Is that something that made sense? Is that something you knew? I mean, he's supposed to be some radical leftist, right? And yet moderates love him. Self-described moderates love him. How do you square that circle? And the answer is because people don't know what the fuck they're talking about when they say they're a moderate. Okay? That's the answer. And it's very unsatisfying, but it's, you know, think about yourself in your high school classroom. And you were to ask your high school classroom to explain political ideologies and select which one they are. Motherfucker, they have no idea. Now, if you ask them what they think about specific policies, they'll have opinions on those policies. And it just so happens that those opinions would line up with Bernie fucking Sanders. And like, this is one of the things that people do to lie to you, right? They'll be like, a lot of people call themselves moderate and Bernie Sanders is not moderate. Therefore, Bernie Sanders is too far left. But if you ask the people who identify as moderates what they think of Bernie, well, whoopsie doopsie daisy, they love his ass. How does that square? Because the people saying Bernie Sanders is too far left and moderate and there's too many moderates are lying to you. They're trying to make an inference when a direct question would be a better question. And yet they don't show you the direct question of what self-ID moderates think of Bernie Sanders. Because they're, again, ideologues lying to you. They like to lie a lot. It might also have something to do with the Americans being very progressive as a whole on their individual ideologies, but always vote along party lines which are diametrically opposed to their own individual ideologies. This is what you're talking about is team sports. This is the other advantage of Bernie Sanders. He breaks people out of that mindset of team sports. People don't look at Bernie Sanders and think Democrat ideologue, Democrat partisan. They think of Bernie Sanders and they think honest guy who cares about people like me, who wants to do things to help me and my family. They don't think Democrat. And that lets a lot of people who might agree with him but hate Democrats like him. I mean, he's got 14% of conservatives saying they're favorable of him. That's pretty good. Elizabeth Warren, 8% of conservatives say she's good. Pete Buttigieg, 10% of conservatives have him somewhat favorable. I mean, so Bernie Sanders is way, 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 way more popular. And like, if you look at Elon Musk, 80% of conservatives like Elon Musk. This is just partisan shit. Look at the moderate approval of RFK Jr. Okay, that might be a good one. The fuck is this dumb fuck? RFK Jr. moderate. 44% unfavorable, 40% favorable. So, like, is Bernie Sanders the only person who absolutely kills it with moderates? I mean, is there anybody on here who doesn't kill it, who actually does better with moderates than Bernie Sanders?
Here I'm going to say something which, you know, people can feel free to disagree with. I believe that even in 2024, Bernie Sanders could have won the election. Because the thing about Bernie Sanders that made him a plausible candidate was three things. Number one, the track record. He's been consistent over decades. He's been consistent since the 1970s, so we're talking about a half century. So
more than that,
people could trust him, as in he's the real deal. Number two, he was very careful not to personalize the campaign. If you remember his slogan, it's not about me, it's about us. It's not about me, it's about us. And number three, the platform. Everybody who heard the name Bernie Sanders as a presidential candidate, they knew Medicare for all. Bernie Sanders was skillful at that. You know, people criticized him for constantly repeating himself. But it was a very smart thing to do, because he knows the average person will only hear him once. Most people are not news junkies. So there'll be one time they're tuned into him. And so they knew Medicare for all. They knew double the minimum wage. They knew abolish student debt. They knew a Green New Deal. What did you know about Kamala Harris? No, really. I won't claim I followed her campaign under a microscope or under a magnifying glass, but I did follow it. Even now, there was something about giving $25,000 to small homeowners, you know, something she just threw out there. Apart from that, anything? Anything. There was no campaign. So, now you might say, what did Trump have to offer? Well, the answer is very simple. He represented a throw of the dice. We knew with Kamala Harris, it was more of the same. We knew it was more of the same.
Wait, do I have like autoplay on? What the fuck? Good autoplay though. We went to Richard Wolff. Have you already watched the Noah Samsen video? No, I have not. I think we're gonna watch that soon. Here's one of the things. So, do you guys kind of get my point with Bernie Sanders, which is like Bernie Sanders is actually the moderate choice. If you ask moderates who they like the most, the answer is Bernie Sanders. And he's loved by libs. 85% approval rating with libs. I mean, who has better with libs? I mean, like, even if you go and look at, like, let's see here. What's Pete Buttigieg at? Pete Buttigieg, lib, 72. So Bernie Sanders is loved by libs more than Pete Buttigieg, and moderates more than Pete Buttigieg. Yet Bernie Sanders is far to the left of them. How does that work? It works if you understand that people have no idea what they're talking about when they say they're moderate or lib. They don't know what that means. And it's okay. It's okay to not know what lib means. It's okay to not know what moderate means. It's okay to not know what socialist means. I don't give a shit, quite frankly, if the average person knows what those fucking things mean. All I care about is, do you support the policies that are going to make this country more equitable? That's what I care about. And the reality is they do. So when you have people persuaded on the individual they like, Bernie Sanders, when you have them persuaded on the issues that you support, what the fuck? You want to make them give themselves a label? Like, what the fuck are we doing here? But the fact that people get this self-labeling wrong, and they get it wrong. I'm sorry, they just get it wrong. They don't know what they're talking about when they label themselves. And I've talked about this many times. I'm going to show you what I always show people, which is there's an article that was written years ago called "The Moderate Middle is a Myth." It went and gave ideological tests to people who call themselves independents, people who call themselves moderates. And the thing that you notice about moderate voters is this leftward corridor is the most left wing. Okay. These are people that are most egalitarian, economically egalitarian, means they support redistribution and government programs. And the other quadrant is social issues. On this one, it's pro-immigration. So people that are moderate are actually left wing on net, especially when we're talking about redistribution. Like, if you look, these two categories are for people who want higher minimum wages and Medicare for all and all sorts of shit. That's these two, the top one and this. It's canted. I don't know why they canted it, but whatever. The reality is that this is moderate people. This isn't all voters, okay? This is people who identify as moderate. By the way, almost none of them are libertarian. Libertarian people are, we're going to cut government spending, but if you want to, are you pro-gay rights and pro-immigration, but you want to cut government spending? There's nobody who holds that position. That is a freak position. There's one guy who's self-ID'd as a moderate who's also a libertarian. They don't exist. Libertarianism doesn't exist. And when we talk about undecided voters, notice something. Undecided voters, they're all over the fucking place. So I'm yelling about this, I'm sorry, but like the reality of this is one of the most important points. And when you look at people that are undecided, who call themselves independent moderates and who are undecided, look at where their ideologies cluster. All over the fucking place. Again, most of them are redistributionists. And those that aren't are literally dead center moderate people. So like, even when you're talking about undecided, self-identified moderate independents, which by the way, who gives a shit? You don't care about this. This is silly. People have no idea what they're talking about. I'm sorry, but if you are a -1 on egalitarian and immigration, you are not a moderate. And like, this is the reality that I think is the most frustrating, because you'll have all these conversations about this shit, and this is well known by anybody who keeps up with the facts. So why do people talk about this more? Because they're lying. Okay, we have the new okay, it's pretty clear that Zoran is the only person who has a chance of beating Cuomo. Endorsing anybody else is malpractice at this point. Endorsing anybody but Zohrad is literally malpractice. Cuomo's winning because he has name recognition. That's why, but his favorability is shit. His Cuomo is his favorability is fucking shit. This is Cuomo's pollsters, by the way. According to this, he has 95% name recognition. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, right? Can you imagine voting for Cuomo? Like the brain rot you have to have.
People that have been voting with Republicans on these messaging bills are people that could get primaried. These groups are paying attention to that, the lawmaker said. Democratic town halls across the country have been erupting into fury over Senate Democrats' decision to let a Republican spending bill pass rather than use it as leverage to constrain DOJ. Several House Democrats pressed on Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, folding in the government spending fight, have responded that the Senate leader should step down. So now you have Democratic politicians coming out and saying, Schumer's got to go, dog. John Hickenlooper, who's literally like just a nobody Democratic senator, normie as all hell, he was like, I don't know, dog. I think Schumer's kind of got to go. He really screwed the pooch on this one. Representative Sean Casten's town hall was repeatedly rocked by disruptions and was shut down by police after 45 minutes due to outbursts from pro-Palestinian protesters. The senior House Democrat told Axios that a colleague called them after a town hall crying and said, quote, "They hate us. They hate us." Among the things I got at a town hall were, "Will you call for Chuck Schumer to resign?" the lawmaker said. Last week I got, "You need to tell your leadership they had no right rebuking Democrats for being strong at Trump's speech to a joint session of Congress." That's about Al Green, who stood up and said, "You have no mandate to cut Medicaid, Trump." And then he got censured by including 11 people from his own party, voted with all the Republicans. Oh, I'm going to be principled to show. People are like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Somebody's finally standing up and fighting and saying, protect Medicaid, which is healthcare for poor people, and you're shivving them? You're stabbing them in the back at a moment like that? Jesus Christ. So the grassroots are where you are and where I am. And that has never been more clear ever in my entire life. Quote, another thing I got was, Democrats are too nice. Nice and civility doesn't work. Are you prepared for violence? For violence. This is the Democratic base. But that's the thing, man. It's not even just, like, it's not the left-wing base. It is the Democratic base. So now, in other words, my opinions, your opinions, the opinions of the broader left have now become the normie liberal
Did I end up
position.
emailing? I will.
And that's what's different about this moment.
Oh, by the way, chat, I just posted some of my mint political analysis that nobody. This is the stuff that gets the least amount of interaction. Why would it? Interesting detail of this poll is that Bernie has a plus 15% net approval rating with self-described moderates, the best of any person in this poll. Democratic Party negative 35. Guys, let's pour all of our energy into the Democratic Party. This is like, I mean, it's like, god damn, dude. It's like, I'm going to name my organic food company Subway.
That people look at the AOCs and the Bernie.
I can't wait till it's open season on socialist and communist history show that Marxist views you guys will never succeed. This is my reaction to you. Hold on. Let me just go over here real quick. Let me just show you this bitch.
To the city of Beijing.
So agrees.
这是载入中华民族史册的一天。
实现中华民族的伟大复兴，就是中华民族近代最伟大的作为。经过长期努力，中国特色社会主义进入了新时代。 国共产党万岁！伟大光荣英雄的中国人民万岁！
One of the funniest things about this music video is you end with that, and this is what China looked like under capitalism. And like, it's very funny because we're gonna win. Like, everybody understands that capitalism is not sustainable in the long run, that it is as stupid as the slavery systems or feudalism. Like, you have a system that has made Elon Musk the wealthiest man in the world because he lied about a bunch of stuff and got a bunch of rubes to buy stock. That's what you think the end of the human race is? It's about a bunch of rubes lying, getting tricked. So a stock number goes up. That's the thing that you want to reward. That's what you're saying. Pathetic. And the United States of America is weakening itself with the right winger, because the right winger has been tricked to believe that humanity is divided into races. Who's been tricked to believe that humanity is divided into nations, which are concepts that are really, really new. I mean, it's like, how embarrassing do you have to be to pick up a textbook and realize that we didn't have passports until like the 20s? These are concepts that are like a little bit over 100 years old. Human beings used to be able to flow from one state to the other, one city to the other. Like, all these concepts that this guy thinks are like born into humanity, like deeply are ingrained, are no more than 300 or 400 years old. The human race has been on this planet between 1 million and 250,000 years. Most of that time spent in primitive communistic societies with very little in the way of hierarchy or exploitation. And like, that's just sad. It's sad to think that this system is the end state of humanity, or that white people are better than other races, or whatever the fuck dumb shit you believe. It's actually legitimately dumb as fuck. What's the difference between the CCP and the CPC? I honestly don't know. The name of the party is the Communist Party of China. That's the name of the party. And CCP is Chinese Communist Party, which is something that people say as an insult. I don't know why they think it's such an insult, but it is what it is. The CPC is the name of the party. The CCP is what people say as an insult. I don't know why they think it's so insulting, but that's the answer to your question. If somebody is saying CCP, then they're trying to insult China, typically. Don has been released and is currently in the hospital at Hebron receiving treatment. He was beaten by soldiers and settlers all over his body. The soldiers left him blindfolded and handcuffed throughout the military base last night. This is an Oscar-winning director who was kidnapped by the settlers of the IDF last night in the West Bank. He just got back from America after getting his Oscar for best documentary film. Anyway, long story short, if you think there's good, like, the idea of the thing about right wingers is they are cowardly. This is the thing about right wingers. They are cowardly. Like, there's a reason why Hitler killed himself in the bunker, right? Because he's a coward. You know? And there's a reason why Nazis spend most of their time, you know, trying to shoot children in the head or gas children. And that's why they got their asses beat by the Soviet Union. They did that because they're cowardly. Is CPC because communism is meant to be global Communist Party of China instead of Chinese Communist Party? Am I wrong? Yes. Basically, what communists believe, in a nutshell, is that all human beings are inherently equal. What that means, and deserving of equal treatment. It doesn't mean that we get equal outcomes. That's not what that means. It means that our value as a human being is equal, and every human being is deserving of moral consideration. That your nation doesn't set you, or your race, which is a myth, doesn't set you over anyone else. That is a socialist belief. And now humanity is divided by cultures, by language. And the song that I showed you is called The Internationale. It's actually a French song. And one of the things about communism is it's actually Western thought. This is one of the things that's very funny to me, is whenever conservatives are like, defend Western thought. Socialism is Western thought. Anyway, so the Internationale is what the song they were singing. And there, you know, it goes in a bunch of different languages.
I'm trying to think a note here. How about this? Arise, ye prisoners of starvation. Arise, ye wretched of the earth. For justice thunders condemnation. A better world's in birth. No more traditions strange shall bind us. Arise, ye slaves, no more in thrall. The earth shall rise on new foundations. We have been not, we shall be all. 'Tis the final conflict. Let each stand in their place. The international working class shall free the human race. 'Tis the final conflict. Let each stand in their place. The international working class shall free the human race.
Beautiful.
Bernie Sanders and the Jasmine Crockett's, and they go, oh, you represent me way better than Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and all of these MAGA collaborator Democrats. That's how they're viewed now. Weak, feckless, spineless, MAGA collaborators, believe in nothing, will fight.
You have to understand something about the difference between the left and the right. The right is about being afraid. The right, and because when you're afraid, domination is security, right? When you're afraid of others, you put them in chains. Whereas the left is about solidarity. It's about equality. It's about friendship. It's about care. It's about an unguarded back and the confidence to know it won't be stabbed. What do you think leads to a more fulfilling life in a better world? The idea that we could uplift everybody to a point where we could all live in harmony and justice and peace? Or a world where my race needs to dominate others? And the only way I'll be safe is if I get dominated and I dominate the people below me. and I hold them down with brutality and violence. Notice that the right winger came in here and his argument was he was going to use brutality and violence. And the reason why they're scared of people like me is because I know what you are, man. And I'm going to fight fire with fire. I'm not a lib. I know what you are. I know what you are. I'm not going to be confused. You are when people like you are gone, the human race will be able to advance. And that is people that are full of hatred. I hope to be the last generation that has to deal with you kind of people. I hope that we are seen as traumatized because we had to deal with you fucking scum. Fascists are honestly the enemy of humanity, and this is the thing. Fascism is a suicide cult. You know? Like, you could make the argument that Germany in the 1930s could have advanced its position significantly both in Europe and in the international system if it had been aggressive but tempered in its diplomacy and military actions. Like, they could have taken the Sudetenland. They could have taken, the Danzig corridor. They could have taken Memel. They could have remilitarized the Rhineland. They could have, done the Anschluss and combined with Austria and done all sorts of stuff without utterly flattening Germany and humiliating it and getting it prostrate before the world, occupied, and having its politics and its military and its culture dominated for generations to come. That's what fascism gave Germany. Fascism did not give Germany, a proud country, a proud nation, dominance. It gave them subjection. It made them into the slaves they sought to make others. Do you see that's the paradox of fascism. Fascism doesn't uplift you into this higher order. It doesn't prove the nature of your superiority. It proves your fallibility. It proves your, the reality that the Aryan race is not the master race. If anything, the German nation was turned into a subject nation, subject to the occupiers and armies that defeated it. Pathetic. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are who fascists look up to. Like, pathetic, dude. Absolutely pathetic. The only thing that the Nazi Germany ever accomplished was killing kids and civilians and being defeated. Pathetic.
For nothing. All right, they continue here.
And like, what are the things, like, a lot of people will say stuff like, a gajillion people died under communism. And it's true. In the development of the Soviet Union and in China, millions of people did die from a lot of different causes. That is true. I don't think any socialist would deny that. But what is interesting is those people who died under communism, they're exaggerated. And they are treated as if death refutes their policies. Well, 8 million, 9 million people starve to death every year under global capitalism. Does that refute capitalism? Of course not. Why not? When millions starved in Ireland, did that refute capitalism? When millions starved in the Bengal famine, did that refute capitalism? And like, what are the, I think the biggest argument people try to make is the Great Leap Forward in China. We've talked about this before. But if you look up Chinese famines, I want you to realize something. Look how many there were. You have 2 million died in this famine. 11 million died in this famine of 1810 to 1811. 15 million died in the 1846 to 1851 with a 45 million population decrease. 8 million died in the famine of 1857. 30 million died in the famine between 1851 and 1873. 13 million died from 1876 to 1879. Is this capitalism? 25 million died in the Chinese famine of 1906, 1907. 10 million died in the Chinese famine of 1928 to 1930. This is, is this capitalism's fault? 5 million died in the Szechuan famine of 1936. 1 million died in the 1942 to 1943 famine. And then you have the this is the famine they so delete all these famines, right? You know, these famines don't matter. This is the famine that matters. The one that ended in 1961. This is why communism is wrong. And notice that there's no more. The Chinese Communist Party did the thing that was impossible. It ended famines in China. Oops. $15 to 55 million, and every single right-winger will say 55 million is the number, right? Not 15, right? If it was 15, it would be normal. It wouldn't even be the biggest famine in Chinese history if it's 15 million. So this is supposed to refute Marxism, but this doesn't refute capitalism? Why doesn't this refute capitalism then? It ended famine by creating a huge famine. No, what happened is the Chinese Communist Party reformed and figured out how to do national, collective agriculture and advance their agricultural industry. They modernized, because when China was taken over, it was by the communists. It was one of the poorest countries in the world. That's part of why they won. Because capitalism had failed in China so spectacularly. They had been so humiliated and occupied and colonized that the people of China rejected capitalism. They rejected this, and they fought for the communists, and that's why they won, because they were so tired of being dominated and humiliated and exploited. That's why. Do you know why it could be 50 to 55 million? Because it has to do with basically the right wingers try to make it as large of a number as possible. And they use things like, oh, there were avoided births, right? There were avoided births. So those count as deaths, right? Like, she decided not to have a child because they were hungry. So therefore that is a death. Anyway, the fascist guy. What is the fascist guy saying? Okay, let's leave it the fascist guy. Okay. It's impossible to change the minds of anyone who thinks any types of Marxism works. The most powerful country in the world is Marxist-Leninist. I mean, I don't know what else to say. The largest economy in the world is Marxist-Leninist. I don't know what else to say. Marxism leads to totalitarianism. You just said you wanted to have open season death camps. I don't think you have a problem with totalitarianism. Your worldview is very contradictory, man. I don't think it makes any sense. Your views have led to more deaths and destruction than ever in human history. Nonsense. Fascism killed more people than communism in the like 20 years it was relevant. Marxism will permanently lose. Why would it lose? It's an objective description of reality. I don't think you understand what Marxism means. You should be afraid of the views that lead to mass death. Nine million people worldwide die each year from hunger and malnutrition. I guess we should hate communism because capitalism is starving 9 million people. I heard 8 quadrillion people dying is bad, but apparently not. Just someone who sees the faults of Marxism. All my kids are educated on the flaws of Marxism and capitalism. The flaws. The flaws. One of the things you'll notice with far right wingers like that is they can't actually defend what they're saying. They can't actually say what the flaw of Marxism is. The flaw of Marxism is what? Just making fun of, I mean, fruit is really expensive in Japan.
level of exasperation is comparable to the Tea Party for sure, even if the issues and policies are very different, said Huffman. By the way, let me use this moment to point something out. If you are considering running for office in the Democratic primary, I want you to do it. I want you to do it. Because there's never been a moment more ripe for our ideas to win, for us.
If you want to run in the Democratic Party primary, if you don't know how to do it, you shouldn't do it. Unless you are a community leader already, and you're like a major leader in your local progressive organizations, and you have the ability, or you have a large platform that you can raise money on. Like, if you are just some random guy, you're not gonna be successful. In fact, what you should be looking to do is help somebody else who agrees with you on shit run. Just everybody running just like pointless, aimless, ignorant campaigns is not the win. Now, it doesn't mean I'm trying to discourage people that have like done serious work. Like, if you've been involved in your local politics for a while, and you're known in your DSA, and you're known in your you're indivisible, and you're a leader, and you're a successful community member, then of course run. But if you're just some random fucking guy, you're not gonna be able to pull it off. It's a full-time job. Is this a critique of Kat? No, Kat can run because she has a large platform, and so she's able to raise money from social media, and she's able to get attention to her campaign. She's able to mount a legitimate campaign that will be forced to be acknowledged. It was already acknowledged by national media. So her campaign is obviously a real campaign, like right off the bat. Before she even did anything, I mean, she was able to get a whole bunch of excitement behind her campaign. That in and of itself is proof that it's a good campaign.
To rise up. The default perspective in all of these districts is protect Social Security, protect Medicare, protect Medicaid, fuck Doge, fight MAGA. All of the things that we believe in are the default perspective. And so if you have a corporate Democrat in your district who has taken votes, for example, to, oh, I'm going to support some of Trump's cabinet picks, right? Man, they got a target on their back. They got a target on their back. Right? And so many Democratic politicians already ruined their chance at 2028 already. Think of Gavin Newsom with his chummy podcast with sloppy Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk and Michael Savage. In like this, 2028, he plummeted to the bottom of the rankings because
he should have been plummeting because California is run like shit. This is the thing that I think that this is why I don't really like the idea of running as a Democrat. I wish Bernie Sanders would start his own party. I think it would be think it would be hugely successful, to be honest with you. And I think it would be such a profound shock to the system. Like, the Democrats have a hard, like, this is where the position the Democrats are in right now, which is they need to convince the billionaires that they're worth bribing. That's how bad they are right now. The Democratic Party is so knocked down, so unpopular, they're scrambling to convince the billionaires they're even worth bribing. And everybody hates the Democratic Party. It has the shit approval rating. So if Bernie Sanders came out and said, I'm starting the American Labor Party, or the American, Progressive Party, I'm reviving the Bull Moose Party, whatever the fuck. He's from Vermont. They have moose there, right? Maybe they don't. Does Vermont have moose? Probably not. I think those are West Coast, right? Yeah. Oh, wait. It says there are. Well, look at that. By the way, chat, have you ever seen a moose in real life? They are legitimately gigantic. Like, it's hard to even tell because there's nothing to like give it context. This guy is like your car. I would not be nearby two bull moose that were getting ready to clash. Those motherfuckers will turn you into paste and not even notice. When I lived in the mountains in Utah, I opened the door one day and there was one 15 yards from me. Yeah. This guy was hunting a moose on his plane. This is Alaska shit right here.
We flew into Fairbanks and we're driving
before you got
it last year.
because the wind.
I spent summers in Alaska. My uncle, there was some moose. We would come by every now and then. We'd feed them. The problem is that moose don't have ill will, but if they decide you're a problem, you're fucked. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like they're coming there to eat you or anything, but if they decide that you're a problem, you're dead. This is a good size comparison.
Look at this big fella here. Wow, Kalia, look at him. He's huge. Hey there, bud. Hey there, bud. You gotta... No, I'm not gonna touch it. Hey there, bud.
It's like, are you gonna touch it? I'm not, what? Honestly, being in a car that close is dangerous, honestly. Anyway, I think the bull moose is a fucking badass animal. And a much better mascot than the fucking donkey. God, the Democratic Party is just the fucking worst. And the elephant, there's no elephants in America, you fucking lose. Like, how is that your fucking party? You have this huge continent of some of the most beautiful animals, a diverse ecology on the planet, and you pick a fucking elephant as your symbol? Dumb as fuck. So we have donkey and elephant. Dumb as fuck. What about Bernie coming out against immigration shit? Bernie didn't come out against immigration. He just pointed out that we need to have an immigration system that is sane, which we currently don't.
Of his actions, right? Now's the time for fighters, bro. This will be the Democratic Tea Party wave. To Representative Jimmy Gomez, who has faced the same left-wing primary challenger for 3 election cycles in a row, this crack-up has been a long time coming. Quote, the base has been pissed off for a while. I've been dealing with it for a long time, since 2020 at least. But most members didn't feel it because they weren't in top 2 elections, Gomez said. Still, he acknowledged, it seems to be more widespread now. Said Representative Delia Ramirez, my constituents have passionately said they are not happy with Democratic leadership. They expect more from me and from Democrats in Congress. For the first time since at least the aftermath of the 2008 election, Democratic voters have a net negative approval rating of their own party in Congress.
And we get rid of, like, what's the... Well, people cannot possibly think that a ballot line is worth this. Like, I think that people who think a ballot line is worth this are literally stupid. I think they're just exposing themselves for being lazy fuck and stupid fucks. You could get like, it's not that hard to get on the ballot. Like, I mean, it is if you have no support and you're just a random guy. But a national movement led by Bernie Sanders could get on the ballot. I mean, it's not that hard. Fucking Jesus fucking Christ. Ross Perot can do it. You can do it. Let's talk about like ballot independent ballot requirements. Let's see if this is like, okay, ballot access requirements for political candidates in Wisconsin. An individual could seek the nomination of a state-recognized party. An individual could run as an independent. Independent candidates must petition in order to have their names printed on the general election ballot. Okay, so how do we do it? Let's do Congress. Okay. Let's look at Pennsylvania. Okay. U.S. House. Oh, I don't want to see the actual. We can find. I could just Google it. Honestly, it's not that big. It's not that hard. Is my answer. Like, people do it in the Green Party and they get on the ballot. Like, come on, this is not that hard.
In 1992, I was a 23-year-old apprentice electrician in Kokomo, Indiana, watching the presidential debate between George Bush, Bill Clinton, and Ross Perot. During that debate, one candidate won my vote immediately. They were talking about NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which Congress had yet to approve.
We have got to stop sending jobs overseas and move your factory south of the border, pay $1 an hour for your labor, have no health care, that's the most expensive single element making a car, have no environmental controls, no pollution controls, and no retirement, and you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south.
My decision was made in that moment. I saw the threat in my community. If corporations were allowed to kill good blue-collar jobs in the Midwest to pay poverty wages to some poor Mexican worker, they were going to do it. And workers on both sides of the border would end up paying the price. That's why I voted for Ross Perot. Let's look at what's happened since NAFTA passed. Over 90,000 manufacturing facilities have disappeared in the United States, wrecking communities, ripping families apart, and leaving workers on unemployment or struggling to survive on low-wage jobs. Every plant closure is a bomb dropped in working-class communities. You can literally see the blast zones in Kokomo, Flint, St. Louis, and beyond. The big three automakers alone closed 65 facilities in the last 22 years. I'd love to say today that things have changed, but as we're talking right now, more work is being shipped out of the country, and more jobs are being lost or are in jeopardy of being lost. Stellantis has laid off thousands of workers at Warren Truck, while the trucks they used to build are being made in Mexico. John Deere, Mack Trucks, and many other companies are relocating work to Mexico right now, all in an effort to drive a race to the bottom. Economists and talking heads want to say that tariffs are bad for the economy. You know what's bad for the economy? Letting corporations ship jobs to other countries where workers make $3 an hour so the company can sell a truck for $100,000 and pocket the savings, while American workers and Mexican workers scrape to get by. Tell the workers who used to work at Lordstown, Ohio, that our trade system is working. Tell it to workers at Romeo Engine or
What I think they should do is try to organize those Mexican factories, man.
Baltimore Transmission, or Cleveland Casting, or Twin Cities Assembly, or Oklahoma City Assembly, or Janesville Assembly, Wilmington Assembly, Fredericksburg Powertrain, or St. Louis Assembly. The list goes on and on. There isn't a state in this country that hasn't been devastated by the free trade disaster of the last 33 years. The status quo is killing us. Some economists are trying to scare anyone, saying that the cost of tariffs will be passed on to working Americans. But the cost of NAFTA was passed on to working Americans in the form of plant closures, deaths of despair, and economic devastation. We feel its effects every day. Free trade isn't free, it's a disaster, and it's time to end it. The experts said NAFTA would help the working class. They were wrong. Ross Perot was right. NAFTA sucks, and it's time to fix our broken trade laws.
What a king. What's his point? His point is that when you do NAFTA, so-called free trade isn't free. If you allow capital to move across borders with no restrictions and goods to flow across borders with no restrictions, but you don't allow workers to flow across borders, then you give capital the ability to leverage and economically exploit people, maximize their profits. And that destroys this country. And then, by the way, this country has been destroyed. The country that has all the manufacturing is the most powerful country in the world because they have the ability to actually change things in the way they want. When you get rid of all this capacity, it goes somewhere. I recently attended a PSL IWW meeting, and a lot of the focus for the IWW guys were how the UAW is collaborating with the Trump admin. They were basically shitting on big unions. Really rubbed me the wrong way. IWW has like 10 people in it. Anarchists, man. Like, you know, it's the same thing with Trots. Trots and IWW are, I mean, like, with all due respect to our anarchist brothers and sisters, they have like 10 people in it. Like, you know, UAW has hundreds of thousands. It is what it is. He didn't just say tariffs are cool. He says he needs to say no tariffs if you don't have the infrastructure. I'm afraid he's going to be misinterpreted by... No, he's saying tariffs are good, and he's right. He's objectively right. Now, it doesn't mean dumb Trump tariffs. It means correctly having it... What he's really saying is industrial policy is right, which is a little bit more complicated than tariffs, but tariffs are part of it. Donald Trump is just a dumb fuck. Donald Trump is just a dumbass piece of shit. Like, there's that being, that's why he didn't say Trump is right. He said NAFTA sucks. I like IWW, but whenever somebody's entire, like their entire angle is to try to attack other organized labor groups, it shows that they're not really they're not really doing anything. You know, they're not really doing anything.
I just talked about how there is no major left-wing media source online. There's no socialist platform. And people got at me about Hassan. But I'm sorry, if you're using your socialist platform to co-sign genocide apologists who not only deny the genocide in Palestine is happening, but endorse the perpetuators of it, you're a bad socialist. If you're using your platform to funnel support towards the Democratic Party rather than telling them to join their own socialist party, you're a bad socialist. If you're using your platform to co-sign someone who has constantly distanced themselves from Marxist theory and even suggested that it's an extremist understanding, you're a bad socialist. And I feel like it should go without saying, if you do...
My feeling on this is I don't care. What if somebody's... I don't think this actually does anything. Like, I actually don't think this does anything. Hassan and I have always said something, which is electoral politics are where the masses are. I'm trying to convince people that we should start a new third party, or a new major party, a labor party, a working class party, a party of the masses. That's what I'm trying to convince. Now, Bernie Sanders has come a little bit in my direction and said people should run as independents. At least they've been convinced that maybe running as an independent could be a good idea. But the masses are where the electoral politics are, because that's where state power is right now in America, right? And if you're a socialist, you understand that bourgeois elections are strategic moves. I don't give a fuck about being called a good socialist or a bad socialist. I care about outcomes for the working class. And it's right. It is right to say that the Democratic Party sucks shit. There's no doubt about that. But you're not actually building anything. You're not building anything. And it's always going to be a challenge of separating opportunists from people who are actually dedicated to left-wing movement. And there's no easy and clean line that you can make. Like, and this isn't even really purity, right? Because AOC says there's a genocide in Gaza, right? Bernie Sanders basically says that we should stop giving weapons to Israel. Now, is that my ideal outcome? No. But I recognize something else, which is if that outcome were to happen, Israel would collapse. We don't need to go to war against Israel to stop the genocide. We have to just stop giving them the means to perpetuate it. So if AOC or Bernie Sanders were able to enact the foreign policy they're saying right now, the genocide in Gaza would end. So if you care about the genocide in Gaza, you should be supporting the people that are going to create the conditions where the genocide in Gaza ends. It's the same thing with the Vietnam War, right? The North Vietnamese were objectively the moral and correct side of the Vietnam War. The United States was the imperialist occupying power, committing war crimes and killing millions of innocents. And they had and it was a completely unlawful war. But you didn't need to elect somebody who was pro-North Vietnam. You just needed to elect somebody who wanted to pull out of the Vietnam War. Right? Do you understand my point? Is if you just isolated yourself to only the people that were explicitly pro-North Vietnamese, you wouldn't have made any difference. But by convincing people to just withdraw from the Vietnam War, you've effectively done what the North Vietnamese wanted you to do, which is stop interfering with our country. And that led to their victory. And that is the reality of the situation. Like in America, we don't need America to do full communism tomorrow. We need America to just withdraw from the empire. And that will allow 1,000 flowers of leftism to bloom across the world that are now being held in check by the American imperialist state. So our mission as Americans is to pull back America to our own shores and focus on building up the conditions of our own working class. And stop stepping on the necks of every left-wing movement across the world. If you're an American, that is your mission. Your mission isn't to be like, I am the most pure leftist. No one gives a shit. Your mission is, I will do whatever it takes to pull America back to its own shores. And it just so happens that if you do that, the quality of life that you will have will increase. You will see better infrastructure, better education, better healthcare. You might even be able to afford a recording studio instead of doing it out of your car. And like, this is objectively the truth of the Vietnam War. What happened to the Vietnam War is when leftists and liberals were able to unite and put tremendous pressure on the state to withdraw, that's how the Vietnamese won. The communists in Vietnam did not need us to fight South Vietnam for them. They needed us to shut the fuck up and go away. And that's the same thing with Israel. Israel is propped up because the United States is giving billions of dollars to Jordan, billions of dollars to Egypt. We're sending tens of billions of dollars of weapons to Saudi Arabia, which we prop up. We are interfering in Lebanon. We are supporting an Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria. Like, the United States of America is creating the unrest of the Middle East. If we just pulled the fuck back and just let the Middle East and the Arab world govern itself, it would develop its own left-wing movements, its own pan-nationalist movements, and it would unite. And Israel would be forced to reckon with a new reality and end the apartheid and end the genocide. That is what this guy doesn't seem to get. He seems to think that Bernie Sanders and AOC having kind of shit opinions on issues or issues that are not quite as ideologically consistent with him equals they're the same as the liberals. And that is, quite frankly, ignorant of history, ignorant of world politics, ignorant of reality and what our mission is as left-wingers in fucking imperial core. And I don't know what else to say. Like, you know, I am not unabashedly endorsing Bernie Sanders and AOC. I'm just saying that's where the masses are, and I want to keep my mind connected to where the masses are, not to entertain this spiral of into irrelevance of my perfect left-wing, my own personal left-wing presentation. That doesn't do anything, man.
This is going to be a quick video about a very, very...
And so, like, I look at this shit and I think to myself, what is he trying to do? What is the objective of the guy in the video? What is his idea? I think what he's saying is you should make him the biggest leftist streamer. Like that, ladies and gentlemen, seems to be the sum total. And I'll close this point with this video.
Personally, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that the United States of America is being humiliated and is leaving an area that we had come to defend. And we've been defeated. Personally, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that the United States of America is being humiliated and is leaving an area that we had come to defend. And we've been defeated.
Now, this is the American ambassador to South Vietnam being forced to flee as the forces of North Vietnam ended the Vietnam War by capturing Saigon, or as we all know it, Ho Chi Minh City. Like that's kind of the point I would say to this guy, which is like, I get it. I get the frustration with Bernie Sanders and AOC. There's plenty to be frustrated with them. And endorsing Kamala Harris was dumb. Because by endorsing her when she had such terrible positions on the Gaza genocide, you created space for people like this guy. It was just a miscalculation and they were wrong, period, dot, to do so. I didn't endorse Kamala Harris because of that issue. And at the time I said that's exactly why, because if you actually want to stop Trumpism, then you had to force Kamala Harris to be better. Does anybody think Donald Trump being president is good? Does anybody think that Donald Trump being president is good? It is obviously not good. But it was inevitable with the liberal party of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris doing the crimes that they did. Of course they were going to lose to Donald Trump and fascism. But it's not good that fascism won.
You do any of these things, you're probably not a socialist at all. And if you're a fan who's got a problem with what I'm saying, you're definitely not a socialist either. Some of the key
I don't really think that... See, the problem with this video is that it's emotional. And it's all emotional. It's not very much analysis, not very materialist, to be honest with you. I'm just getting a lot of pathos, a lot of emotions. I'm not getting any argument. Like, what we should do is, I think he said you need to join a socialist party, but which party? He didn't even have he doesn't even really have a plan. And it's just kind of general wrecker shit.
Of socialist politics are recognizing a contradiction and critique. Hassan not pressing Bernie's...
Socialist politics is not recognizing the contradiction. That is the analysis of Marxism that shows the inherent contradictions in capitalism that lead to its continual crises that lead to the necessity of socialism in the future. That's not the sum total of socialist politics. Socialist politics is about organizing the masses and boosting class consciousness and recognizing the revolutionary condition you're in and building towards a future where you could actually achieve a revolutionarily sufficient mass of the working class. And I'm sorry, man, but TikTok videos in your car haven't cut it. And like, I feel a lot of the frustration that other people feel at Bernie and AOC. I do. I feel like they have a lot of bad lib advisors. I think they're in the DC milieu. I think they're too disconnected from DSA or other socialist organizations. I feel like they hang out in this space of opening up the conversation toward more left-wing politics, but they don't lead. They're a little bit sheepish. And they're always trying to triangulate. They're being politicians. And politicians are inherently pragmatic opportunists. That's what they are. So instead of whining, complaining that they're not being the good boys and little girls you want them to be, why don't you build some institutions that can hold them in check and put the fear of God into them? And this is, ultimately, I think a lot of people analogize too much with conditions that happened in the past, and they don't address the conditions we're in now. The conditions we are in now is that liberals are disenchanted with the Democratic Party. That liberal elites are working to collaborate with a fascist state. And the Republican Party has collapsed fully into a fascist or crypto-fascist Trumpian cult. And they are attacking some of the fundamental liberal pillars, like free speech, that make socialist organizing possible. And I think a lot of these people are not like this guy. I don't know who the fuck this guy is. I don't know who this guy is. Like, I don't know what the fuck this guy is. I mean, he's got a few TikToks.
It's getting sad, fam. Liberals are out here desperate, gassing up Bernie Sanders again. Like, did y'all not get his grift his second presidential run? That man stole hundreds of millions of dollars from working class people to turn around and endorse the very same party that sabotaged his presidential run. He was oddly quiet when Democrats were in power, the wealth gap was increasing, and cop cities were popping up everywhere. But now he wants to fearmonger about an oligarchy in power and the rise of authoritarianism. He was oddly
fearmonger. It's objectively true.
Quiet when Democrats were in office and doing their big one when it came to American imperialism, stating multiple times that Israel had a right to defend themselves while they were committing genocide. But now that Republicans are in office, he wants to talk about getting Gaza humanitarian aid and only sending Israel defensive weapons. Are y'all
that's literally not even true. He was saying that the whole time during the Biden presidency. I think his position on Israel sucks, but like,
getting that this man's entire grift is to take all the radical energy and potential and funnel it back into the system that exploits us. That's why all his solutions are half solutions for the problem at hand. Like, fam, I am not against billionaires being taxed more. I just think that telling us that there's an oligarchy in power and that we need to tax them more is a Band-Aid on a bullet wound solution. It's a non-solution, and Bernie Sanders knows this. His entire thing is to individualize the systemic. That's why he constantly focalizes on individuals like Elon Musk, Trump, or Netanyahu, rather than the system itself that allows these men to flourish.
Okay, this is literally, I think I mean, I don't throw around the word cop much, But first of all, he's got thumb phrenology right off the bat. I mean, I feels like that nose ring is fake. Am I crazy? And that's the opposite of what Bernie Sanders says. Bernie Sanders, by the way, individualizing shit is how you make arguments, dumbass. You say, there is an oligarchy ruining our politics. For example, Elon Musk right now is cutting your Department of Education to cut his own taxes. That's an example, bro. That's an example to prove the point, bro. That's not individualizing shit. I'm sorry. Oh, what is this? Kimchi toast? Hibiscus cake? And a chai latte? What the fuck? Thank you, Vio. This is what it looks like, chat. Kimchi toast. Wow. Anyway, that guy's analysis is not very good. Like, here's the problem. Like, if I had the ability to snap my fingers and create a socialist party with a vanguard that was class conscious and had the belief and support of the masses, I would. I absolutely would. But just stating that we need that is not the same thing as making it happen. So how do we make it happen? If we knew how to do that, it would be a different story.